In most cases, the easiest way to answer that one is by looking at the type of facility that we've got and then look at some of the benchmarks that we would compare to. And so as we look at if it's a school or an office building or right a retail facility or even industrial, in most cases there are some studies from the past, and so we can identify the fact that there are certain technologies that are expensive. In certain places of the country, it's hot in the summertime, and cooling could be a big user. In other cases, say with the school district, something that you may not recognize, but right, cooking meals could be a large component of the facility. But in most cases, I let the facility tell me where I should spend my time. And so that is the one of the first steps, even before we show up on site, is to look at the utility bills and to see if there's seasonality, right? Because heating loads could be a big component. And of course, just because we have a big gas bill or a heating bill, that may not necessarily say that the equipment is bad, but that my building may need some improvements, better windows, better insulation. And so once again, the worst thing I think we can do as auditors is walk in the door with LEDs in our pockets and not necessarily have a prescriptive, hey, this is what we're going to apply, but to let the facility tell us. And I find that in a lot of cases, if you specialize in, say, schools, right, you kind of know what you're going to, find. But you have to be very careful, because then you start doing the prescriptive and you show up with a trunk full of light bulbs, and that may not necessarily be what that customer is looking for. It may be controls because they're leaving the systems on all night, or right. And so you have to go through that process of doing the study. That's probably the only part that I have that's somewhat problematic, is that we walk in with solutions before we ask any questions, before we do any research. And so that's pretty important. So we let in some cases, benchmarking can help us, because right, there's been a lot of schools that have been analyzed, a lot of office buildings, and so we can have a pretty good idea of what we're going to count and how to add it up. But it comes down to it's load and hours, right? And I like to talk about it as amps and hours. And so wherever the amps are going, or wherever the joules, the energy, the heat is going, that's where we need to try to minimize as best we can.